Welcome back to Rocky Mountain Residential, a podcast by MCM Collective. I'm Kelly McBartlett.
I'm Taylor Price.
And today we're joined by Leah Vuko, the owner of Nero Boutique Interiors. Leah, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So do you want to tell us a little bit about you and your business?
Yeah. So I am the owner of Nero Boutique Interiors. We are a local company. We base out of Windsor, out of our home. We have been in the interior design world for about 15 years, which is crazy. And we work primarily with local clients, but we do travel. We'll travel for anyone. We'll go anywhere you want us to, but primarily local Northern Colorado base of clients.
Okay.
And we do full service interior residential design.
That's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about when you first discovered your love for interior design and then how that kind of initial passion evolved into a career?
Yeah. So honestly, I was always drawn to even like redecorating my room as a child. I didn't understand what that meant or how that would grow, but I always really cared about my space. I went to school for psychology, so a huge departure from design. It really wasn't until I had my first daughter and I was home and, we were on a tight budget and I started to look around my space and was not inspired whatsoever. And so I started to make little tweaks. And that became refinishing furniture, which then became refinishing furniture for other people, which then became working for a local interior lighting company, which then grew into wanting to do full service design, which led into working for another company for 7 years, really learning the craft of design and all that goes into residential full service from drywall-to-finish design. And so it was very organic and it was very unexpected. But it became evident that this was my passion and what I really wanted to do and what I think I do well.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how do you describe your personal design sensibility and how does that reflect in your projects? And
Yeah. Oh, I would say my personal design sensibility is always to be authentic. And I say that in that, you're working a lot of times within existing architecture. So it's important that you take cues from the home that you're working in, but obviously cues from the client. The client is a huge driver. How do they live? How do they need the space to function? And then obviously my job is to make that beautiful. But I would say, so it's a very sensible approach, but also I really enjoy a space that does not feel overly fussy, does not feel overly worked. So I would say I lean towards a cleaner aesthetic overall. If somebody is asking for more is more, I could lean into that, but that would not be my natural design sense. I would always ask why we're adding the details, what we're trying to achieve, and really try to understand what the client wants out of those details, and then that would drive the end result.
So we're not seeing like floral wallpapers on every one of your walls, typically.
No. And if we were in like, I've done like women's sitting areas outside of personal closet spaces. That's a beautiful place to take a risk and do a really wild, maybe even floral wallpaper. I'm definitely not going to resist that.
Yeah.
But it's not my aesthetic to do something that I feel like is not timeless. I am always really conscientious of the investment that my client is making, and I try to direct them towards something that is going to stand the test of time and something that they're going to stare at again and again and again and not grow tired of. So yeah, floral wallpaper has a place. Maybe not everywhere.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You talked about aesthetics, right? And also kind of how you have to work with the architecture of the space and what's there.
Yeah.
So I guess on that note, do you ever encounter certain functional challenges, or are there certain things in homes architecturally that maybe aren't a part of that more aesthetic process that are challenges that you have to work through, or maybe layouts or certain things that also are easier to manage and work with?
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends, obviously. If it's a remodel, you're going to run into more of those things. And it depends if it's a remodel, how far you're taking structural changes. Sometimes you walk into a remodel and we're removing pretty much every wall down to the studs, and we can reframe spaces and we can edit entries or transition spaces. But oftentimes in a remodel, you go to edit those spaces and there's a header, there's something that doesn't allow you. It's a weight-bearing wall. You can't just move it. And you have to be really creative. And to me, that is like the most exciting because it's a puzzle that's unfolding in real time. It's something that really stretches me to find a functional but beautiful solution and something that still feels different than what the client already had, when sometimes having to work within the constraint of the space. Other times it's you get architectural plans and it's maybe not something you sat in, you didn't get to chime in on the plans while they were being drawn by the architect. There's weird spaces or spaces that you don't really know how the architect was accounting for them or what the design thought was behind them. And again, it just stretches you to be really creative. Sometimes you take nooks and you make them a cozy reading space. Sometimes you take awkward transitions and you make them a focal point so that they don't feel awkward. And you just kind of lean into the things that maybe you wouldn't have selected or feel like a problem. My job is to really just make it feel intentional, even if it's something that was totally unintentional.
I love that. That's great. That's great.
So in a world where, interior design can mean so many different things, and we see a lot of designers sitting on their armchair, posting on Insta, doing all of that, or, HGTV things.
Yeah.
People can kind of not really understand how important interior design is.
Yeah.
And so what do you think the impacts of good interior design are on living in a home and how you interact with it over time? And
Yeah.
what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, design is so subjective. So it's never to throw shade at someone who does this version of design versus this version of design. But I would say interior design as a whole should make you feel something. It should really drive home a space of feeling whatever you want that space to, the story that you want it to tell. So I would say if someone comes to me and they say, I want my space to feel homey, that's a totally different ask from sleek and modern. And so to me, the power of design and the entire intention of design is to make a space again feel thoughtful, intentional, organic, and organic in the sense that doesn't have to be organic in texture or organic in style, but that it evolved with the space. So to me, that is the difference of somebody placing one chair in a space or even furniture in a space. That's really decorating, and I do that as part of my job, and I love that part of my job. But envisioning the space as a whole when it's at plan set is so powerful because you can edit a space and you can highlight how the people who are going to live there function. And so I would say really design is pairing the aesthetic of a space while keeping in mind the function of the space, while also introducing something that is new and authentic to the client.
Where, I guess, do you feel like if you're taking aesthetics versus functionality and considering both of those things, does that change at all for clients you work with that maybe are intending to stay in their space or their home long term, as more kind of a legacy property or something they're intending to pass down versus maybe in a space that someone is just intending to live in for a few years? Does your kind of approach change in those scenarios?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I feel like if someone were to come to me and say, this is our forever home, and the home that we're sitting in was someone's forever home. This was their end goal. And where we placed investment into this home would be very different than where I would suggest somebody who is going to have to think of resale in 2 to 5 years, even 3 to 7 years. A big thing that I would say is if it was someone's forever home, I would really allow them to lean into anything that was maybe a little specific. So a wallpaper, a stone countertop, it can really take a personality on. And if things get too specific, it's obviously, as you know, going to deter buyers in the future, especially if it's something that is hard to replace. Tile, flooring, countertops, huge things to replace. Lighting, wallpaper, furniture, obviously, easy to change down the road. So I would encourage people who were planning to stay forever to lean into all of those fun things. I would really just try to be the steer to make make sure everything was cohesive, but I wouldn't edit them too much. I would really let them tell their story. Whereas if someone were going to live in something temporarily or not forever, I would encourage them to think about how that space is going to age. Again, I would really push them to be timeless with their choices. I would never push them to be safe because I don't even think the buyer wants a safe space. I think the buyer wants an inspired space. So I would say, let's lean into some cool stones, but maybe something more neutral, not blue, not green, right?
We've seen those houses.
Yes, and they exist and they can be done really well, right? But I would say let's be a little bit more neutral with our selections. And really lean into the scale of items versus the more is more, or even the color, like a really strong colorway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can imagine this looking a lot of different ways depending on the designer you're working with. But for you, what does your design process look like? Kind of walk us through it. Like, is it initial contact with the client, and then what happens? Tell us. Yeah.
So it's a little bit different depending on the type of project that I'm being asked to help with. So if it's a large scale project like a new build or a large scale remodel, generally it starts with an introductory call where I would either be on that call with a client and their builder, a client and their contractor, or a client and their architect. So, and that would just be me asking a lot of questions and the clients asking a lot of questions of me. And it's for everyone to understand the scope of the project, the timeline of the project, and the ask of the design. Like, if someone is asking for something really specific that I don't feel like I can do well, I would hope I would figure that out in the discovery call. And I'm not afraid to tell somebody that I'm not the right fit. And I would hope that a client always feels comfortable telling me the same. Design is very personal. So to me, that is where you kind of work out the kinks if I'm a good fit for you and you're a good fit for me. It would feel a little bit different if it was a smaller project because oftentimes that doesn't include a builder or a contractor or even an architect. Oftentimes that's me having that same style of call, but directly with the homeowner. We're discussing the space that they want to tackle. We're asking each other a lot of questions. We're discussing budget, timeline. And it really helps me determine whether it's something that I can take on with that budget and timeline, and whether, again, I'm a good fit and they're a good fit for me. So it's just a lot of question asking, but hopefully really informative for both parties. And then from there, it looks slightly different if you're diving into like plans versus if it's a finished space and we're just maybe remodeling a bathroom. I would visit the home. The next step would be me visiting the home and getting a feel for scale and how those spaces all need to ebb and flow with each other. Because again, we're taking a lot of cues from architecture and existing finished spaces if it's a remodel.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of throughout your career, as you've started projects at different points, we hear a lot about, I feel like, interior design trends or what's popular at the moment. And then back to kind of what you were saying earlier, kind of really keeping things timeless.
Yeah.
How do you kind of decide what is timeless? What's maybe a trend worth exploring a little bit, or is that just a trend? Or are you steering clear of it?
Oh, that's so hard. I will say that, there's a lot of what's hot, what's not in interior design. Like, you'll see a lot of creators in the industry talking about this is out, this is in. I love to watch those videos. Actually, Kelly and I discussed this recently that I love it. Yeah. I think it's entertaining. Yep. But I also am someone that really has to stay grounded when I watch those videos because everything could be trendy and everything could be timeless to some extent. Now I understand that floral wallpaper, maybe someone would not consider timeless. But I would argue that we've been doing floral wallpaper since the 1920s. So it could be. Now, which floral wallpaper, right? What does
Right.
that look like?
Right.
And in which space?
Exactly. Yeah. So I do think that there's a lot of noise out there, but I typically I don't encourage my clients to follow trends. Now, that being said, I always ask for inspiration photos from my clients. Oftentimes, they are current, trendy spaces. That does not mean that I won't give them what they're asking for. I might encourage them to not make large investments in the things that I feel like are a bit more trendy, such as white oak cabinets. They're everywhere. Nothing wrong with white oak. Nothing wrong with white oak cabinetry. Tons of people have it. Tons of people are putting it in right now. So no shade at white oak. But that's an example of something that could be overly done and feel dated in the same way that golden oak does now. We pull out a lot of golden oak, and everyone had it along with polished brass, right? And you see a lot of people pulling those finishes out to update them. So what I would say is that if you are someone that likes something trendier, I would encourage you to explore those finishes in a way that is not your whole house, one, and not in large spaces. For instance, if you loved white oak, let's do your perimeters in white oak, and let's give you a island that is something else. Or let's just do it in your primary bathroom and keep the main living spaces in something that is just more flexible. So always I would say we consider the trends, but just don't take them too far. Don't make your whole house look like Pinterest.
Yeah, that's great. So along those lines, are there any designers that you're following right now, or any trends that you're kind of seeing out there that you're really inspired by?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay, so yes and no. I would say I'm not too much on social media intentionally. I would say like 5 to 8 years ago, I was like I followed everyone on Instagram. I was chronically online. I think that it can be really inspiring, but I also think it can be really limiting because you find yourself just with imposter syndrome and trying to recreate something that feels really inauthentic because it wasn't your original idea and you're just really like regurgitating similar ideas. So what I will say is that those who I follow very intentionally, and it's a limited list.
Sure.
I love Amber Interiors. She, I think, just has done what I am aspiring to do well, in that she has really evolved. If you look at her work 10 years ago, it was always California cash. It still is, but she's leaned into a more traditional space now, and that's what the client's asking for, and feels authentic to her. So I think she's a good person to look at that's like really grown with her clientele and the industry. But always just like Architectural Digest. I really could not be sick of Architectural Digest. Every house tour, I'm on it. Even if I'm like, it's not my style, I'm like, oh my gosh, just to see the use of materials in unexpected ways. And it pushes me to explore how maybe I could use a material unexpectedly, but not that one in that way. And I think that's the difference of being inspired by one designer versus like something like Architectural Digest, where it's just going to take in all the yummy spaces and so broad.
I love to hear that. RT, we talk, like, we send back and forth, like, did you guys see the latest Architectural Digest video? So it's fun that you're doing that.
Big fans. Yeah. Do you have a favorite house tour you've seen on AD, or hard to choose?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I feel like, okay, so recently I was watching Vanessa Hudgens, which is old. I think it was like from a few months ago. And her house does not look super grand. Like, it looks very livable. Who knows what it is on the outside? It might be massive. So take this with a grain of salt, because obviously what you see is a tiny piece. But what I was really inspired by is that she had used multiple different designers. She had done some things herself. She had hired out Jake Arnold for some spaces like her primary bath, which love Jake Arnold. Could not get enough. But like a very specific aesthetic, right? And what I liked about her space is that it felt really authentic to her. You could tell where she had asked for help in some of those main spaces. Some, like her kitchen, she did on her own in 2020, like with a paint can. And I just loved that. To me, it felt like very collected. And it felt like a true representation of her. And with someone who has an endless amount of money, that was fun to see. And so I just found myself inspired to like always lean into what feels authentic for you and your client.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
love that. Yeah.
So a lot of times we get, clients that come to us and say like, I need an interior designer, or I need somebody to help me with this project. I'm going to do a remodel, or I'm going to build a home. And they've never worked with a designer before.
Yeah.
And when we start talking about like different fee structures and things, like it can be a turnoff. But what I want to know from you is why should people be working with an interior designer? Why should they not just be going to Floor and Decor and talking to whoever's on the sales room floor? Like what's the reason? Why come to interior design? Somebody like you.
Yeah. Well, I would say that every person is different. So there's homeowners that can do it without me and do it well. But I would say not many, not everyone. And truly, I think what you're getting in interior designer is you're getting someone to manage and see the space as a whole, and keep a space cohesive. It is not my home, so I am the editing eye, and I have no problem saying that is a beautiful selection that does not belong in this space. And that is hard to do when you are building or remodeling your own space. You get attached to things. You have ideas of what you want, and sometimes they just are not functional or they don't make sense in the space. So one, I would say like a keeper of selections, a keeper of cohesiveness is part of my job. But also streamlining the selection process. Yes, you could run to every showroom. You could go in and out of every big box store, including Floor and Decor. It is overwhelming. It is overwhelming for me, and this is my job. It is a lot of selections. It's a lot of noise. So what I would say, you're also getting me streamlining and only showing you selections that I have already put my eyes on and told you why they make sense, why they are functionally a good fit, as well as within your budget. Because we can dream it, it does not mean you can afford it. And the worst feeling is to go and find something, completely fall in love, and then find out that you can't have it, right? So it's my job to keep you cohesive to the overall aesthetic, functional, in a place, especially like kitchens, bathrooms, mudrooms, spaces where it really makes sense to be functional, storage, things you have to consider, but then also within budget. So really, I'm like a little project manager for you to hopefully alleviate some of the stressors, to guide you, and to really just partner with you. Like, I am not the end-all be-all. It is your home. It is your space. I take cues from you and how you live and what you want. And my hope is that my client just feels supported through the process, and that it becomes something that they feel benefits them. And hopefully we also end with a friendship at the end, because we spend a lot of time together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you say you're a little project manager, but that's totally underselling the role, and I'll tell you why. We're in a lot of different homes.
Yes.
You can walk into a home and know when there's a designer that's helped the people with that home, and automatically you walk in and somebody tells you, I designed this myself. You know the difference pretty quickly, and so don't undersell yourself. You're vitally important. So
Thank you.
Leah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes,
This was so
thank you.
fun.
It was amazing. So fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you all next time. Thank you.